All from one family on stage, their first gig, the Corrs.
It didn't go in that we could actually be meeting our producer or that this could be a major record deal for us.
If you feel the emotion in every song, you give across the emotion of the song.
You have been a wonderful audience and we will remember this. We will be back.
When you're put in a situation where you have to perform, where you have to deliver no matter what, if something happens.
That's why we're doing it. We're doing it because we love it.
Hi, this is Noel Eccles. I'm a percussionist and I played on Erin Shore on Forgiven Not Forgotten. And you're listening to CorrsCast.
Hi, welcome to episode 4 of CorrsCast. I begin this week's episode speaking with Noel Eccles. He's part of the renowned Moving Hearts, as well as the Riverdance Orchestra and the RTE National Symphony Orchestra. He's contributed percussion to film scores such as The Mask and Twelfth Night, and has worked alongside artists such as U2, Mary Black, Dolores Keane and Christy Moore. Noel has rich connections to Irish music, starting from just the age of 18. Noel kindly gave of his time, and I was able to catch up with him to discuss where this musical journey began and how he ended up playing on the Corrs' first album, Forgiven Not Forgotten. It's wonderful to take some of your time. I'm so thankful that you were willing to participate in this and have some
Pleasure.
moments chatting. I think we should be able to at least reminisce on some fun times and get a better understanding of how you became involved with the track and involved with the album at all and with the band.
In all honesty, it's always a pleasure to talk about one's work, and it's also a pleasure to talk about what's successful work, you know. And also, I do tend to have quite a clear memory about things like this. And it's what a lot of my colleagues will say. You know, I'll talk about maybe doing a film session and say, "Do you remember when we did The Mask and that point where Cameron Diaz walks into the bank," and they're all going, "What are you talking about? I don't remember any of this." You know, because in those days they used to run the film. You know, the conductor would be conducting the film, so it was stuff like this. You know, and I remember I tend to do because I kind of they lodge in my brain musically, and then therefore the reference to the event is there. So it's kind of nice. You know, it is kind of nice.
I kind of been prefacing a lot of these interviews with the people I'm speaking to, their background. So I'd like to ask you sort of how did music become your life? Where did it begin for you?
Very early on, I mean, but just around 11, 12, that sort of time, I had a fascination with drums. I'm originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland, so I was growing up in Belfast at the time when things were very rough, very heavy, you know. So I'm 60 now, so that would have been 1970, just around that time.
Wow.
And so I was interested in music, but more so interested in the drums as a thing. And at school, we were asked, did anybody want to learn instruments? You know, there was a music class. It was a grammar school, and the teacher went through the various instruments. And lastly, he came to anybody want to learn drums, and the entire class put their hand up.
Wow.
And then he said, well, for the first year, you'll be playing on top of a table on a pad, and everybody put their hands down except me. I kept mine up. So I started then with a peripatetic teacher who used to travel around different schools. So I had a year with him and very quickly was getting it. And he recommended that I go at the end of that year to a place called the City of Belfast School of Music, which was a municipal school, which is an evening school. So you went there and you did your theory classes and your ear training classes and then your instrument classes. And then you played in a musical group, whether it be what was called the Friday band, which was the junior band, and then there was a Saturday concert band and a youth orchestra. What was really great about that was it was one of the few non-denominational events in Northern Ireland. So you had all these segregated sports because the Protestants played rugby and cricket and football, soccer, and the Catholics played GAA, Gaelic football and hurling and all these things. Yeah. So there was all that segregation. So all the normal places where people would be getting to know other members of society, that just didn't happen. Whereas in the School of Music, it was just, what's your grade? You're into a class there. You're in the Friday band. So from very, very early on, that whole thing was in my life where it was open. The people I met were they just brought other people, which was lovely, really, really lovely. To cut the long story short, I got to my A-level years, and you know, at that stage, I decided I want to do music. I had played in all sorts of youth orchestras and brass bands and small groups and stuff, but I applied for the Royal Academy in London, the college, and I got a scholarship to that. And at the same time, just towards the end of my A levels, I had a call from what was there were two professional orchestras in Belfast at the time. One was the BBC or Northern Ireland, and the other was the Ulster Orchestra. And I got a call from the Ulster Orchestra to say, look, we need you as an extra player from September to December. Could you do that? And I was like, well, I'm going to college, you know, and my teacher who was in the orchestra said, well, like, you're going to make a fair few bob over that period of time. And so I delayed then going to college. Towards the end of that year, the orchestra in Dublin, the manager who I'd met, he'd heard me playing with the youth orchestra a year before. He rang me, but what he didn't tell me was he wanted me to come in as the principal player. So I was 19. Wow. I was in principal percussion, what was the RTE, which is Radio Telefís Éireann, the RTE Symphony Orchestra. So I was basically employed on a month-to-month contract with them because they were kind of sorting out some jobs and things. And come the following September or summer, I said, look, I won't be back in September because I'm going to music college. And the manager of the orchestra was like, well, don't be stupid. Why do you go to college? You've got a job here if you want. And I said, well, I'm only being employed monthly. And I said, right, I'll sort that out. And a couple of days later, I got a contract. I got a 2-year contract for the position. So there I was, 19, on full salary with a professional symphony orchestra, and getting lots and lots of experiences doing. So there were starting to be other little things because I was always interested in classical music. That's my first training, but I always had an eye for rock and roll, very much so. Like I remember being completely blown away by Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, when that came out, because it was such a crossover at the time. So that got me to Dublin. Between then, so late 70s, I started to get involved in traditional music. I joined a band called Moving Hearts, which had a lot of time on the road together. Beautiful. So I did that. I mean, I was doing that and playing in the symphony orchestra at the same time.
Wow, what a mix!
Well, totally. But also, I mean, I was with everybody. Any band that wanted percussion, I was doing it. You know. So there was a bar called the Bag It In Dublin, which is unfortunately is gone now. But I used to play there Monday and Tuesday with Moving Hearts, Wednesday with a band called Scullion, and then Thursday with a chap called Freddie White. And then Friday was my symphony orchestra concert, and then Saturday and Sunday Moving Hearts around the country. That was my regular week. So you know, I was just gigging all the time, and then on top of that there'd be recording sessions with people and stuff like that. So during that time, I mean, early on in that time, I met Bill Whelan, who was producing lots of different records and stuff. So, you know, he'd be doing commercials, and he'd be doing, like, he did an album with a guy, Freddie White, that band called Long Distance Runner. So there was those connections were being made, and there was also connections with other Irish people like Sean Davy, who was an Irish composer who was going to write classical for orchestra, but using lots of things. And early on in my relationship with Sean, I started using sort of different drums than the standard drum kit or standard orchestral drum, and that led to a certain number of things happening. So this is actually related to what really happens on Forgiven Not Forgotten. Then around, I did a few albums with people like the Hottest Flowers, and like Dublin was an unbelievable scene at that time, because we had this tax incentive where artists were given tax relief on the royalties from their creative royalties. There was a thing brought in by the government, which meant that lots, I mean, apart from people who were kind of under the radar, lots of writers and lots of painters and graphic designers, stuff like that, who were very, you know, big in their business, and filmmakers and stuff. There were lots of musicians around Dublin. There were like the Spandau Ballet, Def Leppard, the Thompson Twins, and the Waterboys. There was all these bands who had albums that had been big, and they all moved to Dublin because their royalties were coming obviously a year later. So the nightclub scene was all of these guys, you know, it was mullets and models.
Literally.
So it became this thing that and there were studios springing up everywhere, because those bands would come in and say, well, we need a studio for 6 months, or we need a studio for a year. So that scene was going on. And at the same time, there was a move to get movie soundtracks, because the movies were starting to be shot in Ireland. There was quite a lot of thing, and there'd been some success with things like My Left Foot, which had got the couple of Oscars, and Dancing at Lunasa, and things like this. These movies,
beautiful, yeah.
So the soundtracks were being recorded in Dublin for those, but then other soundtracks were being done as well. So you had all of this stuff going on, and then the live scene was rocking as well. So you had that. So that's kind of that to a point is my musical history up to early 90s. Okay. Very, very vibrant, doing lots and lots of different things. We'd gone through a major recession in the early 80s. We'd come out, things were really starting to happen. There was a whole feeling of the Celtic Tiger thing going on. I had worked with an artist called Eleanor McAvoy, who was a songwriter. She was a violinist actually in the symphony orchestra. That's how I met her. And she wrote a batch of songs, and she had this song which was called Only a Woman's Heart, and it became the lead song on an album, was the title song on an album, which was a kind of celebration of Irish women in the music business.
Beautiful.
And so I produced that song and played in the band with her, and that song, like, it was the biggest selling album in Ireland ever, something like, it still is. It's massive. There wasn't a home in the country that didn't have a copy of that album and a cassette in the car. That was the joke. So at that time, so that was at the same time. So I was working with Eleanor. I took a year off of Symphony Orchestra because she signed to Geffen.
Lovely.
A guy called Tom Zuta signed her. I don't know if you've ever seen the Motley Crue movie.
Yeah.
Well, Tom Zuta appears, and he's the guy from Elektra that signs the Motley Crue. So Eleanor, I toured for a year with Eleanor, which took us to America. And at that time, the Cranberries were really happening.
Yeah.
And Linger was just on the radio all the time.
So this was around 92.
Yes. So I had, as I said, taken my time out of the orchestra because that was a salaried position, and I had a year's leave of absence. So I kind of committed to doing the thing with Eleanor. So during the course of that, I got or just before that, in fact, at another event, I was asked by Bill Whelan. He'd been commissioned to write a piece about this area in the west of Ireland and Mayo called the Cade of Fields, which were these caves that they'd found from like 5,000 years. And he called me and said, look, I'm looking for a sound that's earth-shattering. He said, he said, I'm thinking a big drum, but I don't know what we can do with that. He said, but I want it to be like a Bodhran, the Irish frame drum. He said, but I also want it to be played in a very physical way as well. I said, well, look, really what you're talking about is some of the lower orchestral drums or the Asian drums, like taiko drums, this type of thing. And he said, well, look, I'm writing this piece and I'm thinking of putting this section in it for these drums. And I said, well, look, I'll put together the players for that. So what I did was I got a group of pipe band drummers, the bagpipes and pipe drums.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the thing with that type of drumming is it's very, very intricate, very stylized, very exact, very, like, you'll have 10 guys playing absolutely exactly the same thing. They just sound like one drum.
Wow.
So I got them together but they were what made it really special. But actually getting them to play on the type of drums that they played on, which were very different to what they would normally play on, created a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So really what we were doing was trying to create the kind of the style of the Bodhran and the way that's played, but on a drum that could sit in an acoustic like a concert hall. Because a Bodhran in a concert hall just sounds like a wet.
It's going nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had these 10 drummers playing these, basically all orchestral drums, orchestral bass drums, field drums, tenor drums, that mostly had natural skins on them, and they were playing with very big, thick sticks. So that created something. So that was really. Now, I had prior to that on an album with a guy called Sean Davey, he wrote a piece called Grania Whale, which was a suite of songs by Grace O'Malley, who's this Irish chieftain queen. On that, again, he wanted the Bodhran imitated, but in a way it could be working in an orchestra. So I had played on these particular types of low drums. So I'd done that myself prior to that, which would have been around, I think, about 87, 88, that sort of thing. So I always had this idea in my head that you could supplement the Bodhran with orchestral drums. I then had a call to say, could I come into the studio? Bill Williams, right, had this thing he wanted to record. And I was on tour with Eleanor McAvoy at the time. And in Scotland, I think we were in Scotland or UK anyway. And I couldn't do the session anyway. But so that was fine. That was just whatever happened. And I know the guy that did do it, the guy called Desi Reynolds, who's the other drummer on the Erin Shore. So Bill was doing this thing which I couldn't do. So we finished our UK tour and we were driving back, or in fact, sorry, in the meantime we'd been to America and back, and we had done some other work in Scotland. We were driving back across the border when the Eurovision Song Contest was on the radio, and we had friends who were Charlie McGettigan and they were the Irish entry. So we decided. Guitar player from the band, Bill Shanley, and myself decided we'd stop and we'd go in and watch them on the. Mm-hmm. So we stopped and we watched them, and then we headed off again in the car. So we were driving and we were approaching Dublin, and the interval act of this Eurovision came on, and the group that started to sing at the beginning, it was a group called Anuna, who I'd done loads of work with prior to this, because I knew Michael McGlinchey's the composer very well, and again I'd used those big drums on their things. So they started. I said, "Well, there's a new." I didn't know they did in the Eurovision, and then so the original Riverdance piece came onto the Eurovision. So I just had no idea what it was. Then the drums came in. Now you see, I hadn't played on that, as I said. I hadn't played that, but the drums came on, and they were. I thought, okay, well that's kind of what we were doing, but there's a lot of electronics in that. It's not all real drums. And then Flatley's feet came on, and I thought it was interference on the track. Because then listen to this on the radio. You see in the car.
Yeah.
So, got home. Next morning, put on the television. Sunday morning, put on the television, put on the news, and there was Riverdance on it. I was like, wow, for goodness me. So shortly after that, contact, look, we're making this into a full-length show. We need you to come into the studio. Let's blah blah blah. So from then, I was very heavily involved in all of that. So we recorded all the drums and percussion and that, and put a lot of our own ideas into it. There was a lot of input into it, and that then went on to become a month-long thing in the Point Depot in Dublin. We put the show on and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff, and then we went to UK. And during that time, there was new bits and pieces being added to Riverdance as well at times. That doesn't work, let's put this in. This doesn't work, try something else. So I was aware, around the time that we were recording, I think we were recording Riverdance tracks, but it was certainly sometime around the same time. I can remember being aware of this band being in from Dundalk, or so I was told, and I was like, they're all their family and they're kind of a pop band. Nobody saw them.
Yeah.
You didn't meet them in the studio. There was no, like in those days, we would all know all the engineers. We'd all know each other. We'd all pop into each other's sessions. There was none of that. Their manager didn't allow it really. So, that was my first hearing of them. Then, as we were back in, I think we'd done the Riverdance run in Dublin. We'd gone to London and then and put it on Hammersmith for a month, and then come back to Dublin. And during the time when we were in Dublin, I got a call from Bill to say, "Listen, I want to record some drums for this track for an American producer."
Erin Shore. It obviously features twice on the album. It bookends the album. The album starts with it, with just stripped bare in the studio, just the Corrs, and then the final track obviously comes into where your appearance is. I have spoken to Simon Franklin and Ryan Freeland, who did the production on getting the track sent by David over for you to hear and then play upon. Can you remember what the track sounded like without you guys on it?
Well, it was just a gap.
Really?
There was just a gap for the. I think there's an initial 8-bar thing, and then the orchestra and the band go back in again. So there was just a click through that section.
Wow.
And one of the you know, like there was the build through it, the build, and then it stopped, and then it's just chuk, 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 chuk. That's all you got.
Love to have heard that. That's great.
Yeah, so you see what that's really one of the things with that type of that type of drumming is that it's like any orchestration as such. You are building up a depth of orchestration, and you are building up different colors within that. If we played everything on the same drum 10 times, it just wouldn't. It would sound bigger, but it would start to sound. It was actually in some ways it starts to contract because you're filling the same audio space. But because we were laying different types of drums, I think I played a hand drum on it as well, if I'm not mistaken, some sort of a djembe too, just to give it another little color. Because sometimes the sound of the hand on a skin gives you another essence as well. So there was that. So that's what it would have been like, you know. We'd have just got, this is what you do, and then you just play all the way through out to the end. I don't remember how big the orchestration was on it when we got it. I don't remember it being as big as it is now.
Yeah.
Or maybe we didn't hear. Sometimes in the studio they don't let you hear everything that's going on, just so that you don't get confused.
Yeah.
You know, you hear too much information stuff. So that's what I remember. That I do remember that. One of the things was that the pattern itself that is on it. That has a flamenco feel to it.
Yeah.
Although it's very slow. It's like a way reduced tempo. And at that time, I was working on a thing with a flamenco dancer in Riverdance, Maria Pajes, which had a very similar pattern. So the pattern has a nod to that as well. So the two of us, and one of the things we discovered as well, recording that type of drumming, was if you do it really quietly first, then you play it a little bit louder. So you do it quietly with not very hard sticks, then a little bit louder, and then you play it very forcefully. So you get the movement of air and the quiet thing. You get the medium kind of attack in the middle one, and then the real sharp attack on the top. So we were, we had developed that kind of technique from doing the other stuff, doing the Riverdance stuff. So that was that's where that track was recorded. That style of drumming is now, as I said earlier on, we were doing it before the Hans Zimmer thing was all about, and all of that sort of movie soundtrack. And also nowadays, you go to any Celtic show, it will have big drums in the tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, Celtic Women, they had the two drums and percussion on the stage, either side of the stage, with all the gear and all that stuff. And it's, a lot of it is show as well, because it is, we are in show business. But the essence of that sound is what people, and there are times, there's a few people who have made their living doing that now, who have credited us as being the people who set that up and for them and stuff. And it's nice that happens. I jumped forward about I think 6 months or maybe even a year. Riverdance was in the Pantages Theatre in Los Angeles, and the visitors or the guests that were coming, or the audience that was coming to see it, but a lot of them VIPs, was like a roll call of the music industry. And like, we were meeting our heroes every night. It was just people coming along. And like, I remember Desi and myself sitting in the dressing room in Pantages, and Burt Bacharach walked in.
Wow. And
everybody else had gone. There was just the two of us. And he was just there, and he was saying, "No, just come down to say how great the band was. Loved it." So that sort of stuff was going on. But I was approached at the time when I was in Riverdance, I was the musical director of that. So I was kind of, as well as playing in it, I was kind of minding everything about the new people and stuff. I got a call to say there's this particular producer wanted to use some of the musicians from the band, and he wanted them. He was doing a soundtrack for an animation movie, and they had a Celtic scene in it, and it was David Foster. And so I met him. I'd already met him actually at the opening night party. And I met him a couple of weeks later then, and we talked about who he wanted and what was required, and we worked out a schedule, because we were obviously doing the show and we had to try and fit the sessions in during the daytime, and we also organise what equipment we need hired and all this sort of stuff.
And this is for Quest for Camelot, correct?
That's the Quest for Camelot, yes.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in the studio. Carol Berger-Sayer was writing the songs, and during the time in the sessions, I heard it on Erin Shore. I certainly heard it in the studio, because I never heard it in its context. And I don't know if it was used in the film.
No.
Okay, right. But that's where then maybe he was just playing it to let us hear what it had turned out like.
Yeah.
And maybe because that's what we were going for on the tracks that he was recording.
Nice.
So we did record. I mean, I ended up having quite a few days in the studio with him, and also he used a fiddle player called Eileen Ivers, and a Bodhran player called Jimmy Higgins, and Des Moore, who was the guitar player on Riverdance. He played on it as well, and they used quite a few of the singers who would have originally been in the Anuna, who then went off on the road with Riverdance. So he used that. Now, I do know that some of the girls played on some of the tracks in Quest for Camelot.
Ah.
So some of the Corrs, I mean, I think.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's completely new to me.
Yeah, I think Sharon. I think it's actually a section with tin whistle, fiddle, and Bodhran, so the three of them on it.
Nice.
But that was a connection to it, to that track as well. So that had kind of lingered on through that. I do remember that we had a real difficulty getting paid because there was disputes within the producers of it, and we had to. And one of the things, you may know this, that if you're a musician in America, it's very heavy unionized. So one of the things that had to happen with us is we had to join unions wherever we were as part of the touring thing. So the company covered that, what we were doing. But when we were in LA, we had to buy, I think it was Local 47 was the union. We had to join that union because we were earning a lot more money. We had to join it at a much higher rate. But in actual fact, they became really useful. They got us paid, basically.
Perfect.
And they did what they were supposed to do. But I also remember they rented all the percussion gear, and one of the days there was a couple of different percussion players came in to have a look at what I was doing, because I was doing that thing of the 3 layers of drums, using different sticks, So they were, and I turned, if you're where I'd have been playing sideways looking at the into the control room. So I turned the drum around so the drum was facing up, so they couldn't see what I was doing.
Hiding your secrets.
Hiding the secrets, yeah. But I also remember that there was a cricket in that room, the studio room, which used to kick off at about 7 o'clock in the evening. And for a week, we were trying to find it. But anyway, we had to be back in Pantiages by 8 o'clock anyway for the show, so it didn't affect me too much. But yeah, so that's kind of where that got to, really. That's the connection to that album. I did a track with Sharon a couple of years ago on her solo album, and there was an event. I think in 2003, we hosted the Special Olympics, the World Games in Dublin. And of course played at that, and the producer of that event was a chap called John McColgan, who was the producer of the director of Riverdance, and he commissioned me to write a big percussion thing for a massive amount of players, and he had this idea that Sharon would play in it as well, but Sharon just wasn't up for it. She didn't like the idea. She didn't. She's quite shy, She's great. She's great, but I can remember sitting in the studio. They were recording something in Westland Studios in Dublin. And John McColgan saying, well, I had this idea that we have you carried in by these 6 strapping men. And she was like, no.
Oh, I can see it now. Wow.
did that track with Sharon. Our kids were in and stuff, and but she's lovely, you know, and very just very easy.
Yeah,
and very appreciative of what we would do, you know.
It's a great album. I really loved her solo stuff. I saw a lot of shows, probably 10, 15 shows through her solo tours.
Right.
Great, really great stuff. It sounded amazing. So, and obviously Anto was on those with her as well. So added to that link. Yeah,
of course. He's been Moving Hearts with me.
He's incredible on Moving Heart. He's just phenomenal. Yeah,
he's great. He's such a wit and such a great knowledge, and you know, it's been a joy. We've been kind of doing things over the last 10 years, maybe half a dozen shows or dozen shows a year, and really nice. Get together a couple of weeks, go out, go to Spain, go to France, go to Italy. Yeah, lovely, you know, and have a great time. And then we were due to do a lot of stuff this summer, in fact, which obviously that all went, you know. So
from the communication I've had with him down the years, he always talks of Moving Hearts and what an inspiration it was to him when he was a young boy growing up playing the guitar, and to now be playing as part of the band that was such an inspiration to his musical career is just like phenomenal.
Oh, it's great. But
beautiful.
But that's what I mean. You know, the hearts are full of legends in the sense that you have Donal Lunny, who's like the kind of godfather of traditional music in Ireland, or the godfather of the development of traditional music in Ireland, and someone who has given us all so much time and information and tutelage, really, and inspiration. And then you have this kind of really far out right bebop saxophone player, Keith Donald, who plays jigs and reels on the soprano saxophone, and then Alan, who's just he's the Eric Clapton of the Uilleann Pipes and whistle. Although he'd probably prefer to be Donald Fagan, because him and Anto are mad Steely Dan fans, so it's a bit constantly. But yeah, so it's a really, really special group of people, and something that's you know, I just hope that I hope we manage to get some more stuff together again soon, you know.
Oh, I hope so. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. There's definitely the audience for it.
Well, yeah, I think so. And also, I mean, I know Keith Duffy as well. Keith and I would regularly. I teach at the Conservatoire in Dublin, and on my breaks, there's a particular coffee shop that I go into, and he would often be there, and we'd bemoan the music industry and what you know. And,
Keith's lovely. Keith's really lovely.
There always used to be a joke, you know, that they used to have the two of them had to stand at the back of the stage in a hole. Because you're not going to get too big a taller guitar player and bass player. You know?
They're huge. They are huge. Oh, you can definitely pick them out in a crowd. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. One little thing I'll tell you, which I'm pretty sure Desi will bring up, and we know, and I know that the drums were used for some of the live show events. They were used for their coming on stage.
Exactly.
Yeah, we were never paid for those sessions.
Wow.
We were never paid. Now, it's nothing to do with the band.
Yeah,
it's the management and all that. As I said, there was disputes for Bill Whelan and all sorts of stuff. So Desi and I never got paid for it. Right? So, and furthermore, what would have happened as well is that I would have had my cartage company move all the equipment, and so I would have paid for that. And then so that's, and it's the nature of our business. It's sometimes the biggest things that are the hardest to trace up. So there's a little bit of insight that you probably didn't expect.
Thank you so much for spending some time chatting now. It's really lovely to get that insight of your history and your background in music and how it came to be that you were on the album, and then the experience itself of recording on the album as well. I'm so grateful for your time. It's been lovely to chat, and thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
I had the great fortune of being able to spend a few moments chatting with Desi Reynolds, who accompanied Noel on playing drums on Forgiven Not Forgotten. Desi's involvement with Irish music also spans many decades, working with notable artists such as Sinead O'Connor and Daniel O'Donnell. Desi is often found as an integral part of Riverdance The Show, which has toured worldwide for many years, and he also performs with the RTE concert and symphony orchestras.
How are you, Simon? Nice to hear you. I don't know what Noel told you. We went into the studio, we overdubbed drums on an existing track that Simon Phillips had done, and that's it.
With a ticker element in it that was just blank for you guys to fill in?
Yeah, well, that's it's like, what, 25 years ago, is it?
Yeah.
We just went in and played on this gap, that's correct, with a click track on it.
That's really the extent of it. You didn't even get paid either.
No. Although it's 25 years ago, it's the one thing I fucking remember.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't going to say anything about that, but Noel has already told you.
It's mad. It really is.
It is, yeah. It's crazy because, I know why we didn't get paid, because we couldn't find out who was to pay us. That's why.
Mm.
And we couldn't track down and get to the bottom of who was going to pay us, and it was we were led from one thing to another and from one person to another, and like trying to get to David Foster in LA. Can you imagine that?
Oh, that's impossible. Yeah. And he was saying that you used a lot of different unions to be able to get access to, being paid in different countries that you were touring in, and yeah, it sounds a real nightmare.
Yeah, but that's funny enough. That's the one. That's the thing that I remember about that session, is getting no money for it. I see why you're laughing, because I laugh at it too. I mean, it was quite a big deal at the time, and it just shows you, Simon, the bigger the deal, the bigger the hassle.
Exactly. You do a favour for a friend, or you play on this guy you've known for ages' track, you get paid, everything's bygones be bygones, it'll all be work. Somebody big come along, you can easily be lost, I guess.
That's right, yeah, because nobody say, well, who booked you? Well, and trying to trace the very first phone call you got.
Yeah.
And it could have been for anybody, But that's very true, yeah. But that's about it. I mean, what I'm telling you now is, we just went in, did that thing, and went home, and we saw nobody, had no communication with anybody either.
You did work with the Corrs prior to this, though, once at least, because I've got a recording of you on December 94. You played drums on Love to Love You for them?
It's quite possible, because this isn't something that nobody would know, but in the Corrs in the early days, the young girl who played the drums, Caroline, many times on TV shows, I would play the drums for her. You know what I mean?
Oh wow, that's so cool. Yeah. It makes sense, because you were listed under the credits as in the band for the TV production. It was lots of different Irish families doing a mock RTE kind of family Christmas get together, and you were listed in the band as the drummer. And when she was on Bodhran, but you could hear a drum kit in the background.
Yeah, that'd be correct. Yeah, in fact, I sort of remember at that stage there was an awful lot of TV shows in Ireland, recording TV shows. And the Corrs would be on quite a lot of them. And I would have been in the band, and she would play the bodhran, and I would have played the kit, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Did you also work at all on the series An Eye on the Music?
Yeah, with Bill Whelan.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was he brought in, I think, a different composer every week for that show.
That's it.
From people. I remember Midyear was on it, Elmer Bernstein,
mm-hmm.
and every week it was a different composer. That's right, and Jimmy Webb, And Bill is big. He's a big friend of Jimmy Webb's.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. But that was the first ever time the Corrs were on television in 1991.
Wow, Jesus Christ. It's a long time ago. There were very many other people, and I can't remember who they are now, Simon. It's just those ones stand out in my head.
Yeah. Because Bill Whelan did the original production for the demos for the Corrs before they were signed. Were you aware of that, or did you have any involvement in those demos at all?
No, I didn't. Not that I can remember. No, my only memory of the Corrs and me is that one recording, for a reason. And I didn't even know. I have, like I say, it was 25 years ago, so I had no knowledge whether it was either on an album or whether it was just on the cutting room floor. I had no clue.
Wow. Well, you're credited by name on the album, so it definitely got there. Even if you weren't paid. Thank you very much. It's been really helpful. It's been great to at least have a pinpoint on the a family Christmas, and that background information regarding you drumming when Caroline was just starting out is really useful. So that's good. It's good.
Thank you. Very good. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. If I can be of any other help, just give me a call.
Well, thank you so much for even taking the time now. It's been really great.
All right, Simon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Another huge thank you goes out to Noel and Desi for spending time with us to discuss their work on Forgiven Not Forgotten. It's always wonderful to hear the insights of how somebody's career comes together and how their work is recognised to such an extent where they're asked to come in and specifically thought of for certain songs or certain percussion work. It's amazing to think we're 4 episodes in now and we've been able to discuss and gain insight from those that worked on the Corrs' first album. I hope you've enjoyed so far. I've had some incredible feedback from fans from all over the world, and it's such a joy that this work is being listened to, and the effort that's gone into finding and creating these interviews to build into a series is really being appreciated by so many. So thank you for reaching out, and thank you for sharing the content. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people listening to the very few episodes that have been put out so far. It sounds as though they've been richly enjoyed. So again, thank you so much. If you haven't listened to previous episodes, I'd again urge you to go back and listen to episodes 1 to 3. At the moment, these are being released in chronological order, so some of the content I refer back to from previous episodes is starting to spill through into the interviews that we're currently listening to. I've already started editing the interview for the next episode in the season, which should be coming shortly. As always, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments regarding episodes. I'd love fans on the show to discuss the content, and maybe a section for fan stories to discuss previous experiences with watching the Corrs live or meeting the band members. Get in touch if you have a story to share. It'd be lovely to have you on. Until next time, thank you again for tuning in. You've been listening to CorrsCast.